can't do that. We can't just shove them off. And it's not a bad thing that they're having trouble becoming adults. It's just the way things are. Because a lot of times, as the older generation, I know, I'm 27, I'm not that much older than them, but I'll look at them and I'll be like, grow up, make a decision, you know, like get out there and do something. And he says we can't look at them that way. There is some part of it, you know, we need to have tough love, but we need to figure out where they're at and meet them where they're at and help disciple them there, not just expect them to get to some place that we want them to be at. So, all those things have changed. So we need to minister to this new life stage. And here's the thing, if our church doesn't have a way to minister to this new life stage, this emerging adulthood, they have these dynamic youth groups, but then they're like, well, what's next? And I don't know about you, but junior, senior year of high school, our kids start dropping out like flies. You know, like they get that car, they get that freedom, and they, you know, I guess youth group was just something to keep their time. I don't know what it is, but they start, there's nothing for them after that. And the other thing is that this generation, the millennials, which obviously I'm one, they have a different cultural setting. If you're a millennial, which is 1980 to 2000, things that shaped you during your fundamental years, like 9/11, Columbine. Older generations might have been around during those times, you know, and might have affected them, but because those events happened during such a young part of our lives, that affects us a lot differently than other people. And we don't understand that, you know, people, it affects their security, it affects their, the way that they look at institutions, and so we just need to understand that there are different formative years. You know, technology, information at our fingertips, we talked about that. Let's see. Okay, so the difference in our culture, at least these scholars think that it's not that the generation is not listening to us, it's that we're speaking to them in a way that they can't understand us. It's not that they're not listening to what we're having to say, but they're speaking to us in a way, hello, that we can't understand them. And so just really quickly, this generation is summed up in 3 words. One is access. That one's really easy. You know, they have access to everything under the sun. Anything and everything, and they expect to have access to anything and everything, and they have high expectations. You know, they can get commentaries online. They can get Bible studies online. They can get better preachers, than we are online. So, and it's gonna get more and more and more that they get Bible studies, they get everything they can get from us, in a sense, academically, online. So what do we have to offer them? Relationships. That's what the next one's alienation. They're as connected as possible, but you probably see it, they're connected on Facebook and everything, but they feel so alone. So, you know, where we think, you know, we corner the market on events, or we corner the market on my awesome Bible teaching, or have this great devotional, whatever it is, they can get all that online, but they're looking for those relationships. That's what we have to offer them, that community. And so what are we giving them? A classroom, which is what they're used to every day, or a community where they're relationally discipled. So they're alienated, like we talked about, because adulthood is being put off longer and longer than in previous generations. Churches are not prepared to minister to or disciple those taking a non-traditional path to adulthood, which actually is the new normal. The non-traditional path to adulthood, so it may not be so non-traditional, which means, you know, not just getting married out of college, or not just getting married out of high school, but wanting to be stable. And you know, one of the reasons they're getting married later is they've seen that their parents' marriages fail. They want to be very pragmatic about it. They want to make sure that they have all their ducks in the row because they've seen all these things fail. So, and then the last thing is authority. Like, young adults have such a, I don't know if you see this, a split self. Like, they can like believe everything you're saying about the Bible, and they're yeah, but like they do the exact opposite in life. I don't know if you like talk about something on you know, youth group, and then the next day on Facebook they're like crazy, and you're like, what happened? Didn't we just talk about this last night? They have the ability to be a split self. They can hold contradictory beliefs and behaviors in all different areas. And so what they are is they're skeptical of institutional authority. And why are these young adults skeptical? You may be too, by the way. But because they've seen, you know, impeachment trials, they've seen every part of institution fall apart. So they've seen government fall apart, they've seen the economy fall apart, they've seen their school system fall apart, they've seen the marriages fall apart, they've seen our churches fall apart with scandals. So they are not trusting the institution. We're like, well, we'll just be the church and they come to us, figure it out. They're not going to be trusting of that. And we already see that, but what are we doing about it? So, why do they disconnect? I'm going to go real quick over this, because, you know, I have a whole library of books and a whole bibliography if you're curious about this, and I hope you're curious. The main reasons they disconnect, okay? They think the church is overprotective. Surprise. They think that everything we do is fear-based motivation. You know, we have helicopter parents who want to protect every kid from every scrape. And so we're not teaching them to be radical disciples of Christ. We're just teaching them to be happy and everything like that. We demonize everything outside the church. But following Jesus takes risk and adventure. Jesus lives in a culture, and we're scared of our culture. So what we need to do is teach them discernment. We need to teach them how to think, not what to think. How to think, not what to think. All right, okay, so overprotective, shallow. We've created these discipleship programs, these large group meetings, where after you've gone through 15 classes, you're now a disciple, and good luck, you know? And it works, you know, we thought it worked. I just wrote a book called, it was all about youth ministry, the 50-year experiment failure. Imagine that. Where we've done youth ministry a certain way for so many years and it has failed us. But they're shallow. We need a more holistic apprenticeship, discipleship type stuff. If we've gotten little out of young adults because we expect little out of them. I took our young adults last year to do missions, or young adults, youth. Took our youth last year to do missions out in Indian Hills, right around here, Michellonia. And normally our kids are used to at VBS, you know, they take kids to the bathroom, they fill up water bottles, all that type of stuff, you know, the grunt work, you know, probably what you do. I was like, no, this summer I'm interim, I can do a lot of changes really quickly and they'll blame me and I'll be gone, whatever. So I made some changes. We didn't just do Mud Olympics and all the fun stuff, watermelon crawl or whatever. We did missions every Friday we were in town. And I made the kids be in charge of different aspects of the mission. Say, you're in charge of Bible study, and I gave them like what I expected of them. You're in charge of crafts, and if you don't do it, we're not going to have it. So, you know, get your friends to help you. And it was sink or swim. You know, some days they're like, I don't know what is this that you're doing. But I coached them through it, and that was the highest attended thing of our entire summer. Every Friday, they wanted to go out to Colonias, and they were the ones that were in charge. And they'd come to me, Emily, the kids aren't minding me. What am I supposed to do? Figure it out. You know, like, we're on the field, you know, just sink or swim, throwing it. They don't, right? A similar experience. They don't, we get little out of them because we expect little out of them. So, throw them in the deep end, you know, in a safe way. But, their parents might not like it, but it'll be good for their faith development. Real quick, anti-science. Half of the students of your youth ministry want to go to some kind of science field. If they feel like the church is against science. And it's all that whole evolution debate, whatever. Which is important, don't get me wrong, okay? We're not going to talk about that here. But if they want to go into that, they feel like they have to divorce themselves. Church is one life, my work is one life, you know, and so being able to coach them through career choices is really important. So they feel like the church is against science, they feel like the church is repressive, and that one's all about sex, all right? They feel like, because they're putting off marriage, there's all these temptations, and, you know, being able to coach them through that and talk very honestly with them is really important. They feel like the church is exclusive. You know, youth like to be very inclusive. You know, it's our whole culture. So how do we find common ground? The church is good at reaching recycled Christians, but is that all we're called to do? Churches that are mad at other churches, Christians that are mad at other churches, or they went once, but are we really reaching lost people? And that's what they see is, oh, you're an outsider, you have a tattoo. Sorry, you have a tattoo. I accept you. I don't, just in case you're wondering. And then the last thing is doubtless. The church is not a place that I can express my doubts. Whether that's intellectual doubts, I don't know if, you know, or whether that's institutional doubts, like I don't know about this institution, whether that's unexpressed doubts. They don't even know that they have doubts, but they don't have a place to talk about it. Whether that's transitional doubts, like, oh, this death happened in my family, or I'm going into this new place, I have doubt. And so to help with to do something, sometimes the best thing we can do with our unbelief is to stop fixating on it and get busy for the sake of others. So transitioning into that. So what can we do about it? 3 things, and then some practical things we can go to. One thing is start early. Okay, now Joe's like, oh, it's May, come talk about transitioning your seniors, and I'm like, really? That should have happened like a year ago. Like, good luck. Because it's all about rethinking relationships, you know? Funniest thing is, I didn't grow up in church. I don't have church, I'm not a church person, I don't have parents who go to church. but all the research says that the biggest factor on keeping the faith, sticking to faith, the biggest factor on them continuing to go to church when they go to college or continuing to follow Christ has everything to do with the relationships with older Christians, whether that's with their parents. And what's crazy is millennials, they seek the advice of their parents so much more than other generations, which is weird because I'm like, no, I don't like my parents, da, da, da. But yes, if I need, like, how do we do this laundry, or what should I do with this decision? Yeah, I'm calling my parents, even though I might not, take their advice, but I'm a good daughter. So, relationship with the parents and relationship with older adults. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, we keep ourselves so cocooned in youth ministry that they're not a part of the broader sense of church. So when they get out of youth ministry and they go to whatever college, they don't know how to be a part of church. They don't know how to be sit in the pew without all their youth friends that they've been with. They don't know how to be a church member. So those relationships are really important, multi-generational, and they're ones with their parents. So rethink vocation is the next one. We need to have relationships that help them see that all of life should be Christ-centered. And normally we're like, oh, your vocation, yeah, you're going to go into Christian ministry, this is awesome. But we need to help them see that everything they do, whether they're going to be a nurse, a teacher, a scientist, an officer, that's a calling from God. And you need to be able to see how that fits in and how you can share Christ in your workplace. But a lot of times, those who don't have Christian vocations, they feel like they have to separate themselves. So rethinking vocation, and then last one is rethinking wisdom, because these kids have all the knowledge. They have more knowledge, at their fingertips. They have everything they could ever want to know. They have, you guys know that. I do too. Like, if I don't, you can fact check the pastor right there on the pew. Google, like, really, is that what happened? So they have all the information, but they need to learn how to live wise lives. They need to learn how to interact with one another, whether it's socially, intellectually, emotionally, relate rightly to God and to others. And that comes back to our relationships. They need to not just have relationships with us, one youth minister, however many kids you have, but with lots of generations that can help them learn how to live wisely, which goes back to that, teach them how to think, not what to think. So, what are some practical ways that we can do this? Real quick. There's a guy named Chuck Bomar who wrote a book called The Slow Fade, and he says that we've taken the finish line of youth ministry and put it at the wrong place. He says that when they graduate, we've drawn the finish line and we're like, oh, finally, they're done, we're done, we're gone, done, like I'm so glad they're gone. No. When that shouldn't be where the finish line is. We should continue to mentor and disciple to them, but how do we do that with so many kids? First one is start talking. Start the conversation early, be intentional. Those things don't happen on accident. What should we be talking about? Everything. Talk about Snooki, talk about tattoos, talk about anything they want to talk about. Listen to them, because no one's listening to them. Everyone wants to be heard. There's a story in one of these books there's a book called Stooky Faith. Yeah, these are great books, I promise. This youth minister got a text message at 2 o'clock in the morning from his youth in the high school seniors. Hey, I just slept with my girlfriend, another girl in the youth ministry. He's like, okay, how do I do, what am I going to do? Let's have breakfast in the morning. 8 o'clock in the morning rolls around, they go to have whatever, and he's talking to this guy about what happened and what should do about it. He's trying to figure out how to, he knows it's wrong. He said, that was wrong, and here's the scripture. He knew that. He grew up in church. And at the end of it, the youth looks at the youth pastor and says, I want to let you know, nothing happened last night. We weren't even in the same place. I just wanted to see how you would react if I had done this. He was wanting to hear and see how it would react. He wanted to see if he'd listen or he'd lecture. And so, listen, don't lecture. Okay, how about speak honestly about what they should expect? Most kids feel very, 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 very unprepared for college and all the changes that's going to go on. I was unprepared for all those changes. The party scene, they're going to be really, really, really curious about that if they didn't get into it in high school. Because it's been a big no their whole life, and now they're free. Community and friends. How do you find them? I've been in the same city for my entire life, and now I have to go get a whole new group of friends. These are realities that you need to prepare them for, because in our mind, it's like, duh, okay, yeah, you're gonna be, but they can't even put their mind around. It's like they're stuck in the same mental rut in high school and elementary school, and now they're opened up to a whole new rut, and they don't know how to forge these new places. So community, find friends fast or they'll find you. When I was a college missionary in Sam Houston, this story will never leave me. I was face painting at a tailgate, right? And you're really intimate with someone, this girl. You know, you're like right in her face. So I'm just asking her, you know, what's your major? Where are you from? Da, 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 da. Well, I asked her, you know, what do you like to do for fun? You know, what do you do on the weekends? Well, we go out and party. She's like a little 18, 19-year-old freshman. And I said, oh, okay, that's cool. I mean, face painting, little paw, Sam Houston. And I said, well, is that something that you like to do? You know, it's like, I hate it. I don't like to do it at all, but there's just nothing else to do. She got stuck with those friendships the first week of school, and it's hard to cut off those friendships once you've made them. So talk about how to find friends and find them fast. Church and ministry. I think that's the biggest one. You've been in the same church their whole life, and now you're asking them to find another one. Even if they didn't like your home church, sometimes kids have lots of opinions, it's still home. So they need to know that it's not ever going to feel like home. You're going to go away, you're going to do this. It's never feel like home, but it's okay. These are things you need to be looking for. These are, you know, coach them through that. And I mean, how often do we coach them through that? Like maybe a couple of them, but all your seniors. Talk about daily schedule and life management. One of my excellent leaders in college ministry, he didn't go to church when he was in first year of college, and that's because he's like, I just don't have time for it. I didn't really think about it. Like, it wasn't in the forefront of his mind. So how many of our students don't go to college, don't go to church because they're just not thinking about it? We're not helping coach them to think about it. And they need to know that they're going to make mistakes. I think that's the big thing. You go to college, you have all these options, and we're like, I thought I was going to be an angel. You know, like, they're going to make mistakes, they're going to make poor choices, and the world is not going to end. You know, there's forgiveness and grace, and that's not a license to do whatever you want. But they need to know that they'll have to live with the consequences, but they can find forgiveness in Christ. We already talked about involve them in the life of the church as a whole. So that's something that we need to do. Relationships with adults, we talked about that. You know, a contact with an adult from home church during their freshman year of college makes a huge, huge difference. Whether that's you or a Sunday school teacher or whomever. And so continue that relationship that first year, talk honestly, and not just, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, okay, good. Like, not a superficial level. You know, ask them the hard questions. And connect them with other college students and young adults from their church so they can help mentor them through it. The relationship with their parents are very important, so speak with the parents about their need to continue to be involved in spiritual lives of their kids. Because here's the thing. Parents prepare their kids, helping them with the application, they help them with financial aid, they help them find a dorm room, they pick out the bedding, But how many of your parents have talked to your kids about, okay, so which church are you going to go to? So what ministry are you going to get involved in? It's just a thing we don't think about. So all these things are very duh, okay? Like, I'm not saying I've come up with anything new under the sun. I mean, it doesn't sound like we talk about that. But these are just things to put in the forefront of our mind, and I'm going to annoy you with, to bridge that gap, to mind that gap. So help their parents know that they have a huge influence in their child's life. Not to be annoying, okay? But just to keep being that reminder. This is a big one I never thought about. The first 2 weeks of that college life is going to set their whole trajectory. They need a 2-week plan. Where am I going to find friends? Where am I going to go? I remember the first week of college, you know, I was like a leader in the youth ministry, and I was teaching high school seniors. Oh, look at me. Like, I ended up at a party, because I was like, well, I don't have anything to do. Like, they're like, come with me, you know, we're just going over to Bobby's house or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. I didn't know that was a part, you know, and I'm riding with someone, so it's like this 2-week goal, like 2-week plan of what to do those first 2 weeks. So, decisions about who to be friends with, where to go, how to be, is really important. And you can help them find a church, you know. And so the next thing has like a variety of topics. They're right there in the paper. A couple of them that I want to point out, like prepare them for the loss that they're going to experience. You're losing your family, you're losing your mom doing your laundry, you're losing your friends. There's a lot of loss that happens. And when loss happens, a lot of doubts come in, you know. So prepare them for that loss. Talk about their priorities and celebrate those last things together. So last time to be together, you know, so last time in school, you celebrate those. And here's the thing, if they're not going away to college, you're like, oh, my kids are going to college, which is happening more and more and more because of the economy. You know, a lot of people are staying around, go to UTPA, go to TSTC. Then, you know, they need to have something to transition into. And so find a ministry that you can get involved in if there's not anything at your church. find something. You know, if they're in the Harlingen area, Journey, Harlingen, plug. So find something that they can get involved in, because we say the finish line is 18, but they're not finished. They're finished with us, they're finished with Jesus if we have nothing for them to transition into. So understand them, contextualize the gospel, just like a missionary would, help them understand the gospel in their context. Discipleship, we gotta change the way we do discipleship. They're no longer learning in classrooms, they learn in relationships. That's what all the educators will say to you. And so if we keep on doing the same things the same way, we're insane. So we're insane, and we are, because we do youth ministry. Last thing, I found this last night. So funny, I had young adults over at my house who were watching movies, and one of them was like, oh, I saw all the books on my shelf. He's like, let me borrow that Case for Faith. He opened it up, this drops out. This is our church banquet from my senior year. I was like, how pertinent is that, you know? So it drops out, and I'm looking at all these pictures, and we didn't have Facebook back then. Ugh, I am old. But we kept up with each other in random ways, all the seniors from my church. And I can't tell you, but maybe 3 of them that continue to go to church in college, and about maybe 5 of them are walking with the Lord today. And I can't imagine how many are nomads, you know, they just kind of wandered away. How many are prodigals and said, no one really wants to listen to what I have to say, and I have these questions, but no one's listening. Or how many are exiles and they're like, the church just isn't doing what I see the Bible doing. And I wonder if you can see that in some of your students, or if you know your students well enough that you can do that. And so just be encouraged that they want to learn, they want to grow, they want to be there, and those that are there are passionate. But we have to mind that gap. We have to be intentional in that. So I hope I've given you a few resources to do that today. So thank you guys.